And we are live. Hello and welcome to Fermenting Opinions. I'm your host, David Papiden, and this is Fermenting Opinions, the podcast and Google Hangout show in search of a more palatable political ferment. This is October 16, 2019, and we are hot off the heels of the fourth round of presidential debates that took place last night in Ohio, I believe, joined by Chris and Haley. We're going to talk a little bit about that, and then we're going to move on because as a hangout, we haven't really talked very much about all the other crazy-ass news that's been going on. We have cut 2 podcast episodes released in the last couple of weeks about sort of the Ukraine situation vis-a-vis Hunter and Joe Biden and whether or not Trump committed an impeachable offense. I think that's episodes 7 and 8, I think, of season 3, if you guys want to check that out on the podcast. Anyway, so let's talk a little bit about sort of the how we thought the debate went last night. It was 3 hours. It felt like a lot longer than that to me. I was a little surprised. I was like, we were getting at like the 2:30 mark, and I was like, are we done now? No, they're still going.
Just to jump in real quick. So we're talking
Yeah.
about the debate tonight, and then we're
Yes,
also talking about Ukraine and Syria. Is that right?
that is correct. Sorry if that wasn't clear. Then yes, that is what we're
Okay.
doing. Um, so yeah, the debate was super long. Chris did not watch it, but we've been kind of riffing with him a little bit. Haley, you saw most or all of it?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I saw all of it.
and I think we're feeling that today. But we kind of wanted to give a rundown, our own take. I know a lot of pundits and shows and stuff like that do that, but like we do this too because that's what we are. Um, the thing that it opened with, and we're gonna have to circle back around to this because we haven't covered it yet, about the Bidens, Joe and Hunter, have basically it's been insinuated that there was malfeasance on their part with regards to Hunter Biden working in Ukraine, essentially, and this whole thing was, to my mind, fabricated whole cloth by Trump. But like nobody in the debate really touched it very much. Was that your assessment, Haley?
Yeah, I mean, I think that that was the opening question. And they opening with Biden, I believe, and but the moderators, I don't remember who they went to next. I think that they tried to get other, initially a couple of the other candidates to talk about the Biden thing, but every other Democrat, stayed away from that. What's that line from the Grinch? I wouldn't touch you with a however long foot
Oh,
pole.
10-foot pole.
Yeah. So that they stayed away from it, which I mean, this is a primary race for the Democratic candidacy, and I don't think that they wanted to spend too much time touching on a Trump talking point that has very has a serious lack of credibility.
Yeah.
So Biden touched on it. No one else did, but they did touch on impeachment. That was how it shifted pretty quickly. So going from immediately asking Biden those questions about his son, his involvement in Ukraine, and whether or not there was any kind of corruption or wrongdoing on that part. If CNN was trying to get some kind of everyone, attack Biden and talk about Hunter Biden, that failed. But I think that that's a good thing, though, just because, at least there wasn't, part of, it was 3 hours long, but, there wasn't a chunk of the debate time that was sort of wasted on mudslinging Biden with claims that lack credibility.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree, and I think it just serves to feed like Trump talking points or Trump supporter talking points. To engage in a hemming. And first of all, I don't think any of the candidates up there really take those accusations seriously in the first place. About the Bidens, this was a thing that was, and we'll have to get back into it later, that was investigated in 2016, I think, already and cleared. And it just basically dug up so that there was a thing to be accused about. Was my take on it. And like why dignify that, right? By why breathe more life into it by talking about it more. I think just so that people understand what it is good enough. And I don't think that any of that was new information to anybody on that stage. And none of those candidates want to deal with it. None of those candidates want to appear to be supporting Trump talking points by expounding on it. And I think it was Booker, actually, Cory Booker, that did one of the best jobs of going like, we're all kind of on the same side here. Like we're not really messing with this. Kind of we're all friends here, and we're about getting rid of Trump, kind of thing. And I think actually in that point, what stuck out to me is that Booker not being a front runner, in previous debates he seemed like he went harder against other candidates. In this one, he was a little more kumbaya. I feel like he's and maybe it's just a pet theory of mine, angling himself to get himself like a VP pick, because I think he would probably make a pretty good vice president, and also hit sort of demographics that may be weaknesses for other candidates who are the front runners, Biden, Warren, Sanders. That has occurred to me anyway. So I don't know. What do you think?
I don't know. I know, like in general, what surprised me was, in this debate, one, yeah, they totally stayed away from Biden, Hunter Biden, Ukraine, all of that. And where the teeth actually came out were against Warren.
Yep, definitely.
So, one of the things that Klobuchar, Amy, I always kind of
Klobuchar.
hesitate to say her last name because I think I'm going to say it wrong. She was aggressive, and I think that she put on a good show tonight. One of the things that I think that she did really well on criticizing Warren was, and I know that Warren's this you know from a small town in Oklahoma and came up and became a lawyer, and then is slowly and like that's how she built her career. But Klobuchar, I'm just gonna say Amy. She
Okay.
her criticism of Warren that I thought was interesting was basically that Warren, you kind of seem like this sort of Massachusetts ivory tower elite.
Mm-hmm.
Just because people don't agree with your ideas doesn't mean that their ideas are wrong. And that's you kind of have a snooty attitude about that. And yeah, I found that interesting. I thought that Mayor Pete, really hit Warren on healthcare. And
I found myself. I'm sorry.
the only person who really didn't who tried to hit Warren and it didn't land well was Biden.
Yeah, that was such a weird exchange, and that was kind of towards the end.
Oh, it made me uncomfortable.
It was about what is it, the Consumer Protection
Yeah,
Act, I think.
yeah, yeah.
And that was something that Warren is sort of famous for spearheading. And yeah,
By spearheading you mean creating and then running.
yes. I don't mean to take any credit away from her. That
Yeah.
was very much her baby from start to finish. And Biden had chimed in about how, well, he helped to support that, and he talked to people on her behalf, and it was a great bill, and da-da-da-da-da. And then, like, she came back with, well, I really appreciate what President Obama did, like, completely like throwing him under the bus right there.
That was great.
Like,
I was like, whoo.
Like, people laughed. Like, people were like, what? Like, that was, to me, it was unnecessary. And
I mean,
because I don't hate on Biden, like he's not my guy at all, but like quit beating up on the old man like a little bit.
Well, I
It's
mean,
like it's not a great look.
I mean, I think that that was an adequate response, just knowing what I know about, that agency and Obama. What she said was, I am grateful for Obama for creating the agency powers to enable this thing to come into existence because Biden didn't whip votes for her or anything, and he was acting like he did.
Oh, see, I didn't
Um,
know that.
yeah,
See, that would have been the better response instead of like, you know, basically
yeah.
saying, "Gee, he's like, "Hey, I helped you," and then she responds, "Well, gee, thanks, Obama." Like,
Well,
without
that
it,
is
she
that is
needs.
what I mean.
It's what happened, but there's no explanation as to why. That's the problem. Like, I
Yeah.
literally didn't know that until this second when you're like, "Oh, he didn't whip votes." He made it sound like he did last night.
No.
She
Yeah, he
should have
didn't.
said that. She should have said, "Well, you're acting like you. I mean, sure, you supported it, in maybe in thoughts and prayers, but in terms of getting out there and whipping votes, you're trying to act like you did that and you didn't. Who
Well, I
did
mean, I don't know.
help was
I
Obama."
don't think, like again, like yeah, I think that,
And why have that fight in the first place? That seems so petty to me.
yeah, I mean, I think that she, that's, I don't think that that's something to really get too tangled into. I mean, she got a laugh, and I thought it was a good thing. And if you know about it more, you're like, that was a solid burn.
Gotcha. See, and I just didn't know that, so that's
Yeah,
interesting. I bet a
her
lot of people
best.
don't either.
I so I overall I don't think that she like did amazing. If anything, I think there's parts of that last round of the debates that might have hurt her.
Yeah.
And I think that she needs to answer tax questions
So that's
on Medicare.
so
Like I
that's the
think she needs
ongoing. Go
to,
ahead.
yeah, she needs to like before that ship has sailed. She needs to move on and answer the questions. There was I don't remember where this came up though. She's sometimes really good on the cuff with some of those zings. She said something about it was like, it was like President Trump or Pence or whoever the GOP, get as their nominee. I don't remember exactly how it went, but that one, like, there was like
A couple of good
ooh from the
moments there.
crowd. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what.
Um.
Uh,
So
Go ahead.
I thought that Bernie did really well, actually. Thought that he came with a vengeance after his heart attack. I thought,
That's a really good
yeah,
point because of what I thought after I heard about that and say, well, he's scaling back his campaign. He's releasing videos from home. He's not really going out on his schedule. He's resumed that at this point, but for a while he wasn't. Everyone's like, oh, he's Bernie finna die, right? So like maybe he's not really a serious contender. What's going to happen now? What's going to change? What's going to shake up the dynamic? But he came back to let everyone know. Well, one, he's still pretty well funded, um, to my knowledge, and he's not going anywhere. So he's I'm guessing
but
solid number
he
three spot right now.
RBG'd the crowd.
Yeah. He really did. No, he really did. I think that's a good point that he came out
um,
much really, and he had to honestly if he was going to stay in it any
yeah,
longer. Um, Yeah, no, he did
you
well
know,
with that. But I want to circle back, if it's okay, to the whole thing about Warren. Um, she seems like neck and neck, right, with Biden, who's been the front runner this whole time. That she's pulling higher, she's catching up to him, um, and it feels like, and I said this before we started, that it feels like Biden has taken so many hits, and those are mostly self-inflicted, honestly, by the way he just bumbles questions, and he's also being attacked by everybody. Um, and this is not a love for Biden; it's just an observation, right? That
hmm
he seems somewhat diminished since his first debate, and Warren has just been steadily growing. Nobody really fucked with her up until last night. Like no one took any serious shot at her. And then last night, several people took a shot at her, and I liken it to playing Mario Kart, right? It's you've got the little homing like turtle shells that go after the racer in front, and Biden seems to have been knocked out a little bit, and so they all targeted on the next front runner. And in my opinion, it's because these lower tier candidates are trying to stay in it and are trying to have some big wow moment, um, and which explains why Beto has done so disastrously. I was
So
saying
before
he's
we get to how horrible Beto is
yeah.
doing,
That's fine. Let's put a pin in
just to
that. Go ahead.
Well, just to wrap up, like, one, like, I don't think Biden did bad last night. I think that he disappeared. And I also think that, some people on his team have been working with him because, he resisted long, rambling comments. But, you know, and
He
like
even joked about that. Yeah.
sometimes those short snippets he had good points. So whenever he started talking longer is whenever he started floundering, whenever the exchange with Warren and stuff happened. um he largely disappeared from the night. And I kind of thought, though, like, to me, I understand that Warren's on the rise and take her down, but like, Biden is still in first, and all he has to do is talk for like 1 minute, not any longer, because then he starts sounding weird, and no one takes a shot at him. I mean, and it's not that I want like an epic bloodbath, but I did kind of think that it was heavy-handed on the Warren, and if Biden disappears, he's still, the vice, Obama's VP. Like,
Yeah.
he still has this national recognition. He's still polling in first place. And, I kind of thought that it was a little bit early to go so hard against, like trying to show like why you are the better candidate than Warren, because I don't, they haven't knocked out Biden. He hasn't been hit by, no one's given him that banana peel or anything.
Well,
He's
okay, in terms of his performances, absolutely yes. But in terms of what's affecting the polls, you're right. No. Um, but I think there's something else going on here too. I do think that they are close now, um, and there's been no blood drawn on Warren before last night, and I
yeah.
think those lower tier candidates they're trying to make plays basically and shake up the dynamic because they're not going to go anywhere, right? Unless they can take out, or draw people away from Biden and Warren, they're going to be stuck in the number 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, all the way up to 12
Mhm.
spot, right? There's was a
Yeah.
Tom Steyer guy or whatever
I mean,
who
I'm
basically
sorry.
spent a lot of money to get on the stage, and like he's just you know he's just there, right? And
Yeah,
he's too nice, frankly, like to really go after anybody, and like that's not necessarily a bad thing. I just think the way really the meta point here is that the way that these debates are structured, that we've turned them into the Hunger Games, right? And these
I mean, I
candidates
think,
are doing what they have
what we,
to
well,
survive, but that's not necessarily good debating. That's not necessarily good, rhetoric or discourse or a good public image for any of the people involved, right? You know,
I mean, I think that last night was the round in, the Hunger Games where it was the progressives versus the moderates. And out of the moderates, Joe, he doesn't need to do anything to stand out. The other
yeah,
moderates, because that's really the debate of like who's going to be the Democratic person. Is it going to be a moderate or a more progressive? I don't want to say far left versus moderate, but you know what I'm saying here. And the moderates came out, and then it was versus Bernie and Warren.
yeah,
And Anyway, I
yeah. No,
mean,
I hear you.
but also whenever it came to, and I guess maybe I would put Beto in that category, but he just has not demonstrated any level of competence to where I can even say that he has any kind of,
Yeah, well,
you
Mayor
know,
Pete. He cracked him a
oh,
hard one when he responded to that. Like kind of like I feel you about that. We're gonna come take your AR-15s. I understand your passion kind of thing, but like, how the hell are you gonna do that? And Beto he made some sort of mewling response, and then he gave him a hard
I
left.
mean. Pete slammed that out of the park just because Beto has been going after Pete because I guess he thought that they were similarly ranked, which last night showed they're clearly not.
Nope.
And kind of like calling out Pete for not like having a more like hard line stance on some of the gun positions and not being like hell yeah we're gonna take your ARs. Um, and he called Pete a coward somewhere. I don't remember exactly. Maybe it was on Twitter or something like that. And so Pete,
I,
said last night, I don't need lessons in courage either personally or professionally from you.
yeah,
I mean,
that's, yeah. Ugh. Yeah.
oh,
But I mean,
oh,
so I mean, Pete, he hit pretty hard
he
with that
killed it.
one, and and he also talked about basically, the efficacy of, saying, like a AR-15 gunman kind of thing, like no, kind of like what you're saying. That's lovely, and that will inspire a few people, but like that's not a thing that's going to happen. Um, in the
Yeah.
meantime, all of this conversation is controlled by the gun lobby, the NRA, and that's who you really need to go after. Like that was a great
Well,
response.
the point is, his point was like we have a chance to get something done, like red flag laws
Yeah,
or any some other things. Like we have a real chance to get something done, and if we start talking about rainbows and lollipops whenever we actually have a chance to build a bridge,
right,
the bridge never going to get built.
exactly. And he
I
did the same on healthcare, but I'll let you finish.
Yeah, well, I thought that like you know, that I'm so team Pete. But I thought that he did really well whenever he was directly countering someone. I thought, like with Beto was embarrassing. He also hit back on Tulsi.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, that was to me that was probably the most interesting moment of the night. Um,
mm-hmm,
we might as well talk about that now since we're kind of
go
focused
for
on
it.
Mayor Pete, and I know there's a lot of Mayor Pete fans in our group and stuff like that. But like, so here's where I think, and Chris, you might want to unmute yourself for this part. But here's what I think. I think Tulsi fucked up with that. Like, I think she really fucked up with the way she was trying to come after uh, Pete on this point. Um, that basically they're both in agreement that it's a travesty, and that with regards to the administration or Trump greenlighting this not removal but like moving of troops out of the way so Turkey can invade Syria and slaughter a bunch of Kurds, under the pretext of securing their border or whatever.
Under the pretext of terrorism, ever since America said, terrorism and we can do what we want after 2011, other countries are adopting that
Right,
mantra
and
because of
it's
it's because of terrorists.
the level of irony is whiplash inducing. But
Yeah.
anyway, so this horrible thing went down, and I think everyone's called it out as Republicans, Democrats, everyone's like, these were our allies against ISIS, and you served them up to Turkey, and now they're shelling children. Like, what the actual fuck? Like, this should be a
Hmm.
bipartisan moment of this is
Not
shameful,
cool.
right? So we're all on the same page with this one, and Pete basically said, because I guess he got challenged by Tulsi on this. So it was Tulsi's point. We have to stop with these regime change wars, and she just kept saying that, right? And do you support keeping our troops in Syria, da 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 da, like to try and make him sound like the bad guy for wanting to maintain a presence that would have prevented the slaughter that is ongoing. Um, and this to me was a huge mistake on her part. Like that one does not mean the other. Like we can withdraw from an area if we're sick of endless wars and regime change wars. I think most people, really right or left, are kind of on board with. Um, but you can do one. That's a false dichotomy. You can do one without the other, right? You don't have to serve up your allies to to slaughter and potential genocide now. And you can also find a way to to extricate yourself from the area if that's really the end goal. There's just a smart way to do it, and that this was not it. Um, anyway, Chris, I know you didn't see the debate, but there was this sort of heated exchange between Tulsi and Pete about this. I generally agree with her on us getting out of certain areas if it can be done in a way that doesn't destabilize the region, because if we're already there, we're in it,
Well,
right?
her point was like getting out of endless wars,
Yeah,
and his point was, you know, we're strong whenever we have strong alliances, and and we know that they have our back because they know that we have theirs.
yeah,
And no, I don't want to go on these endless wars, but I'm not gonna, like we can't sacrifice our allies out of
right. Yeah, that's
that kind
she
of
was trying to
preference.
pigeonhole his responses. If you're not for basically, Kurdish slaughter, then you must be for endless regime change wars. She tried to make him sound like that, and it just seemed really just a really sort of ugly equivocation. Chris, do you based on just what we described? I mean, do you have any thoughts about that? Because I know you're kind of a Tulsi fan.
Yeah, it's I didn't get to see it, so I'm limited on that. But
Sure.
it's interesting. It's a tough one. I don't know enough about the history. I've been trying to start reading up on it, but
Yeah.
it's a tough call. I mean, I don't know who to believe. I mean, you got people on the Turkish side saying that the Kurds are kind of radical at times and are coming in and bombing in Istanbul and other cities and acting as terrorists on the border, and so they're coming in to stomp it out. But who I don't know. I mean, I don't necessarily trust what's the leader of Turkey, Erdogan or whatever his name is. I mean,
I
he
could
seemed
Erdogan is how
he
you.
seems like a pretty corrupt guy from what I've seen.
He's
Just
not.
following.
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say no. I don't want to interrupt you. Sorry.
No, and I don't. I really don't know much about him. What I do know is like the personal story of an NBA player, Enes Kanter, who's from Turkey,
Uh-huh.
who is very passionate and outspoken. I mean, he was last summer he was detained in an Indonesian airport when Turkey tried to extradite him and arrest him, and his
Really?
dad has been locked up for years. He's the NBA star, but he hasn't seen his family in 5 years,
I think I
which
saw
are
something about that. That's pretty wild.
he's in the
I
news
mean,
right now.
there's
Go
been
ahead.
coups. There's been attempted coups. Erdogan,
Mm-hmm.
he's,
Yeah.
you know,
We're in this weird situation. Okay, like Turkey's a NATO ally, right? They're
yeah.
presumably on paper above board, um, and
But what people don't, they're invading Syria. It's not that they're trying to protect their own border. They're invading Syria, in a like some kind of like guise of defeating like a prophylactic quash of terrorism. Because they're calling them terrorists. Uh,
yeah, that's what. Why don't we come back to this, sort of rehashing? I really just because we need to finish up sort of our thoughts on the debate. We
yeah.
will come back to this. We can come right back to it actually. Um, but yeah, the Syria thing is complicated. We need to maybe cash out some of what's going on there. Um, but as far as the debate, in terms of big winners, I think in terms of like say performances, like I said, I think Booker did a good job of making himself look like a good VP pick. He didn't really seem to do much else from what I could tell. Uh, Pete got in there and got a little harsh with people, and he kind of came out of his shell. I think it was probably in terms of what we might see in terms of a change. He may have the biggest impact out of that whole thing. I think Warren got bloodied, but she held her own pretty well.
Mhm.
But Pete and Klobuchar, I think
Yeah.
they leveled some pretty serious criticism at her that I think she needs to answer better for, both in terms of
Mhm.
Medicare for all, and what was the other thing, and the taxes thing, which relates to that as well. That she won't answer this question, and we go round and round. Yes, everyone knows she means people's taxes are going to go up, but the overall cost is going to go down. To that person's living expenses is the reality of what she's promoting, but she doesn't want to say the words "your taxes will go up" because that's all Fox News or whoever the fuck is going to pick up and run with ad nauseum. they're already accusing her of it anyway, and just being too cowardly to admit it.
Yeah.
So that's it. You either get called a coward and not able to admit what you're going to do, plus you're doing the thing, or you're just doing the thing. So honestly, at this point, I think she should have just said it.
Points to Bernie for actually stepping up
Yep.
and saying it, though.
Yeah, and
Um,
he got credit.
Yeah, I'll give him
I,
that definitely.
as a guy I'm not a Republican, but I'm surrounded in Republican mecca.
Uh huh.
Um, even a lot of my friends are kind of like, well, kind of, at least Bernie owned it, and so
Yeah.
I,
it had a rippling effect.
I think we all. I think we appreciate transparency. I would say that out of the winners for tonight, I mean, I think that Warren took some hits. Still think that she's in the top. She came out of the top 5 out of the 12 with Bernie in there. I'd put Buttigieg in there, and I'd put Amy in there. That's 4.
Yeah,
I don't really know.
I don't feel like did much other than take swipes at Warren over the Twitter thing, basically.
Oh my God, I think Kamala did horribly.
Yeah, I think she is definitely on her way out. In
I
my
mean,
opinion, Beto should
she
just stop.
basically. So I know that you didn't watch it, Chris, but at one point she was like, whenever they were talking about, you know, these humongous corporations and whether or not we want to break up, big pharma, big tech like Facebook and things like that. Harris went on this rant about Twitter and said that she, wanted Twitter to deactivate Donald Trump's account. And then she kept pushing Warren. She was like, "So will you join me to say that Twitter needs to take down and remove Donald Trump's account?" And she was just like pretty much yelling like, you know, you need to agree with me. Then we need to force this private corporation to do what I say and everything. And like she just sounded like she thought she had this fantastic point. And it was just so like, and even like Elizabeth was just put like almost flippantly like, no, I don't. We need to enforce our antitrust laws. We do not have mega corporations controlling, massive shares of industry and economy. No, I'm not gonna freaking tell Twitter to deactivate Donald Trump's account.
Yeah.
See,
Really.
that's so it in a microcosm. Like a lot of the left, the perspective is just so out of touch. I mean, just I mean, and Kamala has no clue how that comes across. In my opinion, like that's why she's not going to win. She's not. She's like in a bubble.
I'm a cop. That's all.
Yeah.
And Tulsi leveled her in the first debate or a month or two ago with the just calling her
Yeah.
out as a prosecutor for the marijuana, and she's dead right. And all the lay people, blue collar, are gonna see that. Like she's not one of us. So that's
And I
how I see
mean,
it.
she otherwise like, she just seems like she has like good specs on paper and in a sense, but like her message is so tone deaf on like what's important. Like no one gives like no, we're not gonna tell it like what's not important is that Twitter take down Donald Trump's account. What's important is that like
That's a
big
fucking stupid
pharma,
thing to
we
argue
have
about.
massive amount like our prescription drugs are so expensive and we have huge fundraising of corporations and they're basically controlling our elected representatives are pandering to the fundraisers instead of trying to uh, you know uh, fulfill the desires of the constituents that they're elected to represent because these fundraising matter so much more and I mean
I think that sort of demeanor is probably like Amy Klobuchar's greatest strength of like sort of like really understanding where the people are at or at least presenting herself that way. I think that's her greatest strength. I think that's um, I think Pete is sort of on that train a little bit as well.
mm-hmm.
Talking about public option versus Medicare for all, like, if people are saying, you know, I want to choose whether or not I do this or I take the public option. Like, and was great at the leveling the criticism against Warren. You're basically saying that you know better.
Yeah.
And that is in terms of public opinion. The idea of something being forced on you. Everybody hates that, right? And
Mhm.
I know independents and probably moderate conservatives, moderate right-leaning people, like they absolutely hate that shit, and that will send them running. So that would be a great line to continue on against Warren, if that's the strategy. But yeah, arguing about the Twitter thing on a national debate stage, when we're talking about running, someone who's going to run for president against Donald Trump, like that's what the fuck you're going to talk about. That's what you're going to spend your
Yeah.
time talking about. Like, stop. And I get the whole thing about, like, it's, what is it called, stochastic terrorism, where basically some pundit says ugly shit and then somebody else takes it to heart and goes and acts on it. Like, I understand there's a danger there. I think that's why she was promoting the idea of banning him from Twitter. But like, there are better hills to die on, I guess, is the way I think about it, and that should not have been on a debate stage.
Yeah,
When
and I
you
mean,
have no,
so oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Chris.
when you have limited to no substance, that's your only move, is to try to level the playing field by handicapping your opponent. I mean,
Yes.
I don't know. Kamala has nothing, in my opinion. I don't even follow her, but
Yeah. No,
And
you're right.
I thought that with and to get to that point of like Amy hitting Elizabeth with just because someone else has a different idea from you doesn't
Mm-hmm.
mean that their idea is bad.
Right.
One thing that I do appreciate about Warren is she doesn't, she has never come across to me as someone who doesn't listen to that criticism and someone who doesn't try, digest that criticism, take it, grow from it, and go from there. What really, and I don't get that read at all from Kamala. Just, she's not like if she's not getting the reaction if people are doing this criticism, she's like, no, I still have a good point and I'm just killing it with making this great point.
Mm-hmm.
And she's so tone deaf to like, what are you even talking about, like? And so that's sort of
Yeah, she's pugilistic. Like, she's very, here is my point, here's my attack, and I'm just gonna keep going. Like, and
mhm.
she can't, basically isn't really reading the room as to whether or not those hits are landing in a persuasive manner.
Well, and
Um,
it's like she doesn't even want
so,
to,
sometimes that can serve, right? If you're in sort of a hostile environment, but here, when people are sensibly among quasi friends, like, it's not a great look. It's really not. Like, you know, the thing I've said about her before is that, like, she is great as in her role as a prosecutorial, when she's questioning people, in these Senate hearings and stuff like that, about sort of getting the truth out of them. That's where she shines. With this shit,
mhm.
this is an embarrassment. Um,
And trying to get like
I
some
wanted to
truth out of
like her, I
Warren
really
that
did.
Warren doesn't want Twitter to,
Yeah, that's so
bend to her
dumb.
every whim and
It's like,
ban.
Chris. It's like when an apologist sort of phrases like this disingenuous challenge to try to bait you into it, and then to make you look, afraid or weak for not taking the bait.
what are you
Um,
talking about, David?
yeah, I know they never do that. I know, it's all in my head because of my reprobate heart. Um, anyway, um, yeah, I think so. So going forward, I think it's still, it's still Biden and Warren in 1 and 2, and I think Warren's really close on him. Um, that and she may overtake him. I thought she was definitely going to overtake him because I thought Bernie was going to drop out. He's clearly still in it. I think Pete's
Mhm.
probably down there in 4, Amy in 5, and kind of who gives a fuck about anybody else. Unfortunately, we talked a little bit about Yang beforehand. I like Yang. He's got great ideas. I don't really disagree with him on too much, but like, everyone looks at him and like, yeah, you're probably right. It's not going to happen. Like, we're not going to do
You
it.
have no neck.
He has no neck. That's true. I know that counts against him, and not wearing a tie apparently. Uh, but he's extremely forward thinking. He's the kind of people we should be looking to as thought leaders in this country if we want to continue to innovate
We
and
should
grow.
definitely be listening to him.
Yeah, we should be listening to him. He's not a particularly serious candidate. I like him a lot as a person. Again, like I said, I think he's right. I don't think anything he says that we should do is going to get done.
Just to wrap up my thoughts,
Sure.
you summed it up well. I don't disagree with too much. I thought that CNN did better as a moderator. I thought, wrap up the candidates, and I think that Beto just failed.
He should stop.
Yeah.
Beto's done.
I thought that CNN overall did better than they did last time, but that was a low bar. I also thought that they asked a horrible last question.
Yeah, the questions kind of suck. But
anyway,
I guess that's our overall thoughts. And Chris, before we move on to this other stuff, what is your overall take on the primary race? Like, who do you think is doing well? Who do you think should be doing better, maybe?
Well, who do you think is the only one who has a shot against Trump?
Ooh, good question.
It's that's funny because listening to y'all this whole time, I had no clue Biden was. Am I hearing y'all right? He's leading the polls as of now.
He was leading the polls before he announced he was running.
Wow, I would have thought Bernie would be, but that shows what I know.
Bernie's been in third.
Yeah.
Well, it's from afar. It's Beto's on the radar of the Republicans and the people surrounding me only because of the antics and threatening churches and guns.
Oh yeah,
and they're on a mission to see him burn now. So they're watching him. And they're laughing. It's that they're talking about it on my feeds and stuff. But anyway,
they don't need to do anything. He's burning himself out.
No, but I think he's raising an interesting point here because he's basically the foil of. Well, you Democrats said you weren't going to come take our guns. You've said it for years and years and years. Now here's this one clown, basically, who said the thing that we're suspicious of all of you, and now it's proven, and that's the narrative. Every fucking person I've talked to in the last, who's sort of a Christian right kind of person that I've talked to have floated stuff Beto has said, even though it's ridiculous, even though there's no efficacy to it, even though it's legally not serious about and if I understand this right, about sort of repealing tax exemption and stuff like that for churches that don't support LGBT or whatever. I don't know if he said that verbatim or that's how it's been interpreted or whatever. That's not a thing he can do legally, right? Or not anybody can do legally because it's it's in the Civil Rights Act that was it Title VII. There are exemptions for those organizations. But he said the thing out loud, and now everyone's lost their fucking minds, going ooh ooh. They're all gone full Howard monkey with it, and this is the foil now that we have to explain why we don't agree with Beto over and over and over again.
Honestly, I disagree with that though. Just because if they're gonna focus on Beto, go for it because there's a lot bigger fish that they need to be worried about. And if you're going to be worried about that one over there in the corner being your boogeyman, by all means, focus in on him. And I thought that was the main hit back that Pete had. Okay, you say that you want to have this mandatory buyback and you're going to go and take your guns. You have no way to do that. You have no, and just hearing his response to that question of how, some people aren't going to turn in their guns on a mandatory buyback. So how do you enforce that? And Pete's just your, whole thing just lacks competency and credibility. And you're screwing up the option for us to actually get something done. And it's he pretty much called him disingenuous in a way. And I get that he's passionate. And I respect that passion. I understand what happened in El Paso and everything. I get it. But, that's the point, too. Can't say how you're ever going to take away your AR-15s and asses. Some people aren't going to turn them back in. How are you going to get them then? And you just have, well, I will, and it's
it's not gonna go
no, you won't. You're so.
Yeah. And every blue-collar man around the country, not just the South, is sitting there mumbling in their chair, "When you come pry it from my cold dead hands, Beto." I mean, I'm telling you,
And other
What a fucking Ben Shapiro.
well, and other realistic Democrats are saying like, and people are saying that, and so it's not, like, come on, like, just stop with your shenanigans. But yeah, if people want to focus in on him, by all means, he's polling at less than 1%.
And
Go
it's not,
for it.
it's not. It's not because they think he's a serious candidate. It's because they have gleaned talking points that pushes their narrative of basically persecution and the sinister intent of the left and or Democrats, because he said those things. The fact that he's irrelevant isn't important to them. It's the fact that he's he's
Well,
delivered
here's
them
the thing:
gifts
the
for
longer
arguments
that
for
Beto
months and years
is
to come.
the longer that Beto's unemployed, because that's what he is right now, former congressman, and not gonna get this job either. Like, at some point, like, you got to stop talking about someone who was in office 5 years ago. It's like,
Yeah, it's not great.
and so I
That's
mean they can keep going on, but like an unemployed, out of work former congressperson isn't really gonna have, I mean, I hate to say it that way, but this is what it is. Oh,
David.
look at
She just gave me a thought.
what's up.
You could say Beto is the Richard Carrier of politicians.
Oh man.
To
Well, he's worse than
my
that.
bad.
He'd be
That was
the
lame.
he'd be more like the what was that guy they debated oh, that fucking presuppositionalist. What's that dude's name? There was that debate with there was two atheists and two Christians. And then one guy was like, he had like a bottle of poison, and he was like, screaming at the Christians, "Well, go ahead and
Dr.
prove your
Clark.
faith." Dr. Clark. He is kind of like the Dr. Clark right now of politicians. That's what I would think.
Oh
He
my
just made a
God.
I want to
fool
Prove
move
your
of
on.
faith and
himself.
kill yourself.
Yeah,
I
and
want to
there's
move
this.
on from Beto though, because he is kind of dead in the
Yeah.
pan. Like,
Well, we're gonna keep
He
hearing his name
he
though.
done been
That's what I'm
dead.
saying.
But anyway.
The fact that he has no
I,
chance isn't material to that.
but she asked who I think
Yeah, go ahead.
if I think I think Tulsi, and I will say Bernie. I think I caught a case with Bernie with moderates, and if he could ignite the young vote that doesn't normally participate, if he could bring them to the polls, then you could win. But I think Tulsi is a long shot. But I think because if you ran her, every Democrat's going to vote for her automatically. So you got it. Now you're going to get moderates potentially, and then you may even get some Republicans that are tired of the shenanigans, and they're like, okay, she's practical, she's a soldier, and she's attractive. I mean,
I would vote for her over Trump, but like she makes me like the abortion came up, and
Yeah, that was.
and I mean she basically said you can have an abortion so long as I'm cool with it, and I just like
It wasn't. I mean, obviously that's not exactly what she said, but yeah, sort of the idea. It kind of repeated sort of the I don't know, moderate to right.
I mean,
Side.
it was it was Republican talking points,
Yeah.
and I mean, like, I get that she would attract Republicans, but I also, and I get that a lot of people who don't want to vote for Trump, would swallow the pill and do it, but I don't know, man. She says some stuff that
So here,
I mean, anything is better than Trump, but
Chris,
and that's my opinion, but I don't think she'd get every Democrat.
Trump would probably annihilate her once it got to the debates, like just her and him. I hate
She
to
does,
say
and
it.
she doesn't handle, like, she crumbled whenever she was pushed hard on by a couple of, the
And
lower
that's
tier
not a
candidates.
slam on her. She's not a narcissist, probably, so she's not used to. She can't fire off the hip and say crazy things on TV. Like, I mean, that's not normal. So,
yeah.
I mean, no shot at her.
Even that's not even normal amongst narcissists. But I think Chris, to your point, I think you're right. If she got the nom, she would automatically have all the Democratic support, pretty much, and she would pull a lot of independents. I know libertarians love her, and again, libertarians being mostly white dudes, they almost invariably comment on her appearance, because
You got the Joe Rogan vote, and that's
because
don't
bro's got a bro.
underestimate. Don't underestimate that
I hear
platform.
you. I do agree also that she would not probably do well in debates with him because I don't think she is a well-rounded candidate from what I've seen, or maybe that's there and we've just never seen it. But she doesn't seem to come out really much unless we're talking about foreign policy and things pertaining to military service. Outside of that,
She's overly malleable on every other issue.
right? And I think Trump could find ways to push on it. And also, Trump has, how old is he? 70 something. So
Hmm.
for about the last 50 years, he's been beating up on women. So like, that's just he'd be real good at it, in a debate
But
with
you
her.
Oh,
got but
he would totally talk about her appearance.
Yeah.
I
but
wouldn't want
with
to.
Ugh.
coach,
Ugh.
but her appearance is. I mean, I'm not. I'm just saying she's. I don't mean it bad. I'm just saying.
She's an attractive woman, but
Yeah,
also I also think that there's a reason why people were saying, oh, it's just locker room talk and stuff about Trump. I mean, he would.
Yeah.
I can't imagine the nasty kind of crap he would say, and I would
And so,
be
but
would
you
hate.
got a candidate in her that could theoretically. I mean, probably literally kick his ass. And
I think most of them could.
if she could get coached up and learn how to hold that confidence on stage and maybe take a shot at him, like, hey, if you want to
she would
go out on
have.
the course,
I think any nominee honestly has a fair shot, and it pretty much theirs to lose. I think. I mean, Tulsi would have merits as the nominee. I think it's extremely unlikely that she'll get the nominee. It's just
yeah,
I
she
mean,
because
if
ain't
you're
how
talking
got
she's
it.
about
polling
like
now.
just physically kicking his ass, yeah, I think she could. I also
Yeah.
think a lot of the other potential nominees could physically kick Trump's
Haley,
ass.
I think your cat could kick his ass, but that's anyway. Um,
Look, you guys got to drop Biden. You got no chance with Biden, in my opinion, from
You're not gonna
the
hear any
world
pushback
I.
from me.
I don't. Yeah, I don't think he's great in this race at all. I don't think he'll be a great president. He continues to poll well regardless. It's almost like the inverse, like Trump effect, that like Trump says and does disgusting, ignorant, incompetent things, and like his numbers just never fall below a certain amount. Like he's always just kind of there. He seems somewhat immune to basically the total collapse of his administration.
I
We'll get to that. But and then like Biden's kind of the same. Like he doesn't do well in any of these debates.
I don't think that the majority of the voting American populace is watching the debates.
So
You have to understand the nominee isn't going to get actually nominated until July of next year. And Iowa isn't until the end of February, and majority of the primary races, that's going on until May. So who does everyone know exists? The former vice president.
yeah, it's name recognition. But
Hmm.
I guess that's the thing though, is he's at his ceiling, and I think he will do poorly in debates with Trump, because motherfucker can't talk. Like you give
His
him more than
teeth fell
30
out.
seconds or a minute, like, and he just loses it. Like it's like almost like he forgets what he's saying, and he's just kind of making shit up as he goes. And he does this. Well, you know what the deal is, and then I'll say, "Here's the deal." Like
Or
you just said what the deal
or
is. You don't need to say it again. Like, what are you
well,
doing?
he always anytime he says that, or he's like, look,
Yeah.
you know,
Look, the
just
deal
anytime
is
he's
here's the deal. Like, and then he goes in like, I just
now
keep
look.
noticing that, and it's
He's like, look,
so
it's a
weird.
lot harder to grope women these days with all the cameras everywhere and
Yeah,
social
and he's
media.
got the creepy Uncle Joe thing, which
You just
Dude,
got to
he's
put
got
on
it.
the
is
recorder
hypocritical,
though,
but
and
it
then
won't stop
everyone's.
Trump.
No, but like that's what I'm saying. People are like, if I got to choose between two women gropers, sleazebags, I'm going to go with the one that's got the economy roaring and my bank account's looking good. That's what it comes down to.
I think to an extent, I don't know if that's going to be the case next year in terms of the economy. We did hang on that like a month or so ago that like signs are not good. Um, in terms
Trump's
of
gonna and Trump's capitulating and to China to get something done,
yeah.
so that way it stays good.
I'm actually look. This could be the death of me on the internet, but
No, you're fine.
Hmm.
I'm interested to see what his dealings with China, because it seems from what I'm hearing he's actually taken a stand against China. It's hurting us short term with some jobs, but a lot of them jobs may be coming back home, and when they get roaring, it's going to be a lot better.
I don't
It's
know
that
enough
is
to.
I appreciate that you're aware, because a lot of people aren't even aware. He is not doing a good negotiation tactic with China, and you know, he supposedly said that like he made a beginning deal, and China has reported otherwise. What he's going to do is he's going to capitulate to China, and he's going to make some sort of band-aid deal, because he's going to have to before next year, before November of next year. He's going to have to,
Yeah, he can't have
if
a
he
shit
wants to.
economy and expect to have any
But
chance at
he
all.
can't have a medium. He can't have it going medium. He
No.
started a trade where he said it was easy to win. If he doesn't get a deal going on, it's going to have been 3 years. I really think China thinks it can wait him out, and I think China's right on that. So I would bet money that the things that are in the works now is him trying to get, he's going to, all of his hard stances are going to blow in the wind, so that way he can get something inked on paper and say, look what I did.
Yeah, because he
But
doesn't
it's,
have maybe his strength really in this situation. He doesn't really have a political disposition or an ideology, right? He has interest in self-preservation, and he will do whatever he needs to do
hmm
to, at least in his own mind and to his supporters, make himself look good. At least long enough to get reelected. That is his mo, right? He doesn't have, it's like the shit that happened with Syria, and this would be a good time to segue back over to that. Um, that he didn't really fucking care either way, right? I mean, it's pretty obvious that like he had a
Yeah.
telephone conversation with Erdogan after this. He sent this nonsensical like elementary school level, quality.
Let's
Um,
make a deal!
let's make
Exclamation
a
point.
deal. Let's make it a good deal. Don't be the tough guy. People think you're evil if you do the wrong thing. I will do this and that. Like, it was very weird. And then like he had a phone call with Erdogan apparently, and Erdogan was like, yeah, I got it. Don't worry about it. I'll handle them terrorists for you. And he was like, okay, because he didn't fucking care, right? And he doesn't know really probably what's going on, and it's really not of interest to him. And he can formulate the talking point. I'm getting our troops out of Syria. In the meantime, he served up a long-standing ally of the United States in the fight against ISIS, and they're being cut down, right? That's because again he doesn't have a political ideology about it, like. Whereas even the Republicans, even Lindsey Graham, even Mitch McConnell, are like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, what are you doing? Um, because they have an ideology that they're trying to preserve, that it's doctrinaire republicanism in terms of their foreign policy, and he just blew right through it because he doesn't really care, um, and that's why we're seeing what we're seeing in Syria right now. And he's been rebuked by a lot of people. He'll take a hit, but not too bad. We've already got the narrative that, well, this is getting our troops home out of endless wars in Syria, and he already looks good to his base for doing this. And there are more defectors of people saying, what the fuck. But beyond that, like, there's not, this is not going to unmake him, because really nothing but an election or a successful removal from office via impeachment is going to do it. So that's where we're at with Syria. I don't know, Chris, did you have any other thoughts? If we wanted to circle back on that.
Man, like the little bit I've learned about the Kurds, they're valiant warriors. They're possibly decent people. I don't know enough about them. I mean, I don't know their ideology, but I know they've helped us a lot in brutal fighting against ISIS and in other times in history and in Iraq and everything. Um, but at the
They
same
also
time,
did help us in World War II. I do think
yeah,
that needs
God,
to be known. They
it's
helped us
so
in Greece and
insane.
Albania. just to have it known. Um, I mean, they're good fighters. They're brave fighters. Really, they're a stateless group of people that want a state.
Yeah.
They want it to be a democracy. They want to, and one of their things that they're going for with a democracy is that women are people, and so it's not a women oppressive society. And they've been they're very good, strong, brave
Mm.
fighters that have been working with Western interests, you know, since World
Yeah,
War
their
II.
women fighters are incredible, and what they did with ISIS, and how the ISIS guys, run in terror because the
Because it
in
would be
their head, if they
it's
get,
shameful to lose to a female in a
yeah, they
fight.
don't get to go to heaven if they lose, if they're killed by a female in a fight.
Yeah,
Seriously,
and you know what
I
they
mean,
do? They put more women.
Yeah,
So
and I don't know if I have no idea what the demographics are, but from my understanding, in their fighting with ISIS, that they've 11,000 of their soldiers have died in service to our common interests. They had skin in the game. They've lost a lot of people. Uh,
but you got to think too, they wouldn't even be alive right now in Syria if we wouldn't have helped them this far. I mean, ISIS would have destroyed them probably.
yeah, I mean they've absolutely relied on our support, but most of our support is just we have these installations and also air cover in terms of supporting their efforts, but like it's been mostly their soldiers dying. um, I can't remember the exact statistics, but there
Yeah,
was like like a few dozen or maybe 100 of ours and versus the 11,000 of theirs that have died in this conflict in that region. It's just you know and they
I mean,
demilitarized various installations, and they worked sort of hand in glove with us on everything on our say so that we would cover them and protect them. That they didn't have to be militarized in these certain areas. Um, and those were the troops that we had in place that we just moved out of the way for now Turkey to come in and bombard the shit out of them.
yep.
and so okay, yeah, the
It's
Kurds
a
would
sellout,
have
is what it
have
is.
have sustained way more serious losses had the U.S. not helped them with ISIS. It, the U.S. has interest in the Middle East. ISIS was a threat to those interests, and we were fighting them, and the Kurds helped us. And by virtue of that, they're still in existence. Okay, I mean that's yeah, we didn't allow the Islamic State to exacerbate a genocide against the Kurds, or I mean, and there's different groups. I'm being very general on this, but that's not like you know I'm that's not like they help protect our own interests, and they help bring down a like caliphate and everything, and they're a brave group of people who want what they ultimately want is their own state, their own democratic state. And we left them, and we took everything that they had to give to us, and then we left them.
And on one hand, I do think like even if we had to have an exit strategy, I definitely think like I think I saw RJ post about no way to you could justify pulling out so fast and abruptly without giving them time to get a contingency plan or something.
Yeah.
So I get that. But I
Well,
did
and
listen to
because they didn't have a contingency plan, they had to immediately make a deal with it's I forget what the acronym stands for. It's SDF, and I don't remember if it was Iran or Russia, but it was like without any sort of preconditions. Like they're having because they don't want to be annihilated. They're having to enter in deals with people
With
who
our
aren't.
enemies, yeah.
Well, it's not necessarily our enemies either, but it's with people who have no interest in protecting American interests,
Yeah.
and who are also have interests with people who who are our enemies. Russia is not our friend, and
Clearly.
so we're basically and we've trained them too. We've trained the Kurds. We've invested in them. we've educated them and everything. And so, like, and then we put them in a position where, well, okay, we're not going to help you anymore. And yeah, take all that good training too, all that investment that we invested in you, and go somewhere else with someone who isn't going to back our interests whatsoever.
Yeah.
I listened to, and you should check it out. Dave Rubin
Mm-hmm.
just did interview Jocko Willink on this issue, like I guess yesterday or
Oh yeah.
something. And Jocko, it's not like he has inside deep information, but he is saying, like, look, from what I'm hearing, Trump is asking, what is our plan for Syria and the Kurds and all this stuff? And there isn't a definitive plan. And it's like, okay, I'm pulling the plug, you know,
Yeah.
like I'm
I,
not
I
going to
guess
just
I would have
keep.
to see that, but I would love to push back on both Ruben and Jocko. And I don't dislike Jocko. I've heard him on other things. I've heard him on Sam Harris and some other stuff, and I just don't like some particular animus towards Jocko. I don't really like Dave Rubin, but anyway. But like, not it may be the case that we don't have a solid plan or a solid way, that's in the foreseeable future of extricating ourselves from that situation. But the Kurds were our allies, and we did make them promises. And just because we don't know how we're going to get ourselves out isn't an excuse to sell them out to the Turks, one. And two, we didn't get ourselves out. We just moved the troops, like, however many miles away. Like, we just got out of the way of the Turks invasion force. Like, that's
God,
literally all we
yeah.
did.
We've also made past mistakes. Like we did this back in 2011 in Iraq. There's the whole reason why, ISIS, like we created vacuum. ISIS
Yep.
was able to rise to power and the thing is, it's, you
Obama
know,
pulled the troops out before the
and
insurgency was really
you
stamped
know,
out.
handling the issues in the Middle East is complicated. And whenever you have a president who isn't reading the briefings, who prefers to, have things to explain to him in pictures, and isn't, going to, take the time to realize like the layers and layers of complicated risk factors that you need to consider and account for. And the thing is, and Obama didn't do that, and he still made a mistake. You need to at least make the effort to try to understand and digest, what's actually at stake, what are the potential consequences before, you make these kinds of decisions. And whenever you immediately see like the negative consequences, you can't just turn your chair around and cross your arms and say, "This is what I'm
Yeah.
doing." Like so.
Oh, and to credit Jocko, he did also take up for the Kurds and condemn. He did, say what your sentiments, David. But also, one other quick, interesting point. Rubin asked him, Jocko, what do you think the generals that briefed Trump said about this issue? And he goes, I would bet money that they told him, do not pull out like this. Don't do this.
I mean,
And it's,
Mattis resigned over these
Yeah.
these exact issues. No one disliked Mattis.
Yeah, that was
All
we
si-
all, even the most like super liberal, Trump derangement syndrome kind of person. They're like, okay, Mattis, he's an adult. He knows what he's talking
he's all
about.
right.
Yeah,
He's pretty good.
I've never heard anyone say a bad word about Mattis, and he bailed. I mean, fuck, what was it? Bolton was like, no,
Bolton.
he had ethical fucking qualms about this. Well, these guys are hawkish anyway, right? Like this goes back to like doctrinaire republicanism in terms of foreign policy. Like they wanted those troops there, like they wanted them there, working on these interests against ISIS, and maintaining the situation as it was. They were good with all that. Like, and what happened was just like again, it's an indication that Trump doesn't really have an MO beyond what happens in the next 5 minutes, right? Like that's and his reelection, like that's pretty much it. Like it doesn't really get what they're about, and he doesn't seem to care. From you couldn't. This makes no sense any other way. This is nobody's 4D chess game. Like this was just stupid. And anyway, if no one else has got anything, we should probably talk a little bit because I know we're starting to run long. But to hit just kind of briefly on Ukraine and like what the fuck happened in Ukraine. Again, we did 2 podcasts on it. James did a pretty thorough breakdown, both of sort of the things that Hunter Biden was sort of nebulously like in the sort of in the locus of in terms of like this Burisma Holdings, like the guy who runs the thing is clearly a goon, but like Hunter didn't really do anything but be on the
Okay,
board.
I'm dying to ask
Please
because
go for it.
I was talking because RJ was chastising me, and maybe he's right. I'm not.
RJ, I love RJ, but he's got to work on his bedside manner. He really does.
No, no,
Yeah.
no.
Chris, if you don't mind, what's your last name or Facebook name, just so I know in the future? You don't have to share it if you don't want to.
Oh no, it's Hembree, Hembre.
Okay, I'll just keep a lookout and tell RJ to chill.
Yeah.
No, no, no.
Chris is good, but
I
there's some firestorm right now. I've got two people messaging me that Drew muted. And they're like, "What rule did I break?" I'm like, I can't do this right now." But
no, I enjoy talking to RJ about it. So, and I do value his opinion.
yeah.
I think he's a lot more informed on a lot of issues than I ever will be. But I guess what I'm dying to ask all of you and RJ is like, how how did Hunter Biden get this job if it's not some kind of corrupt vaccine deal? Come on, this is ridiculous in my opinion.
It's not necessarily corrupt, but it's sweetheart. I mean, the guy's obviously and again talked about this on the podcast. You're supposed to do our podcast, but that like obviously like he's living off of the family name, right? Getting himself.
I take issue with this a little bit. I mean,
Okay.
he went to Yale. He is he has it might not necessarily be in natural gas industry, but he does have extensive experience. I mean, also, yeah, like he has grown up in the American political scene. Probably familiar with how it works. And everyone keeps talking about like he made $50,000 a month. It's like that's $600,000 a year. He's not even breaking in a million. Like
Yeah.
he has the credentials. He has experience in multinational energy. And like, no, it's not natural gas. Okay, it
Right.
doesn't.
He
And
doesn't speak
so,
the language.
I mean,
He has no use for them other than pulling political strings.
I mean, most multinational companies that are Western based, go with English.
So here's, if I may, here's the thing. Like, so his placement on this board does seem somewhat suspect, right? Like, not entirely. He's not a complete bumblefuck that failed out of high school and he's there anyway, right? Like, he has some credentials, but like, would he really be there if he wasn't a Biden? I would be skeptical of that, right? Um, but in terms of where is the there, they didn't come up with anything because the things that Burisma Holdings was accused of was under their president, who was also like the minister of like energy or some shit like that, um, and basically was like granting his own company deals. Uh, that all that was taking place, and to my knowledge, concluded before Hunter joined that board. Um, so
Yeah.
he could not have been part of that. Even and so here we're coming to the impeachment part of this, right? Or what started off the inquiry. Um, that when this was investigated, they cleared both of the Bidens of any wrongdoing that was suspected. They did not find a there with regards to them getting some kind of better sweetheart deal. What actually happened was, and this is Biden acting as vice president under sort of the orders of Obama, and in conjunction with the international community, was pressuring Ukraine to get rid of their investigator because he was not bringing these corruption cases because they thought he might be kind of a crook, and so they got rid of him. And even this guy that they got rid of, that they kicked out, he went and said, "Yeah, the things that we were looking at under Burisma, all that happened before Hunter Biden." This is the guy that got kicked out. He said this. Who, again,
But there's a sworn affidavit somewhere prior that goes against that, if I'm not mistaken.
saying
Or am
what?
I mistaken?
Saying what?
I don't now. Don't get me wrong. I don't think they have hard evidence on Hunter, but there's a lot of just fishy stuff that's behind the scenes, like from the like that prosecutor. I don't even know enough about it. I should just shut up.
let me no, it's cool. It's like I just want to break it down so that so that people can understand, like, because people who don't want to dive into the minutia of this shit, but want to have some general understanding of what happened, what's what the accusation is. So it did look fishy enough for there to be an investigation into the Bidens, that they were cleared of, and as I recall in 2016. Burisma Holdings is kind of a shady company that's run by kind of a shady guy, but the stuff that they were accused of happened before Hunter Biden joined the board, and the firing of this I can't remember if it's an investigator or prosecutor, but the guy who's supposed to bring these corruption cases against several of these Ukrainian
Equate him
companies.
with like the AG.
Yeah, basically he's like their AG, and like
Yeah, he starts sniffing around, looking in. He starts, from what I hear,
he didn't
happens on Hunter Biden. Like, hey, this is weird. How did this
So
guy?
that's
And then
you
all of a
have it a
sudden,
little
Joe
bit
steps in.
backwards.
Respectfully,
You know,
that's inaccurate, because
Okay.
what Joe did was get rid of this guy because he was slow walking corruption investigations, particularly in the case of Burisma Holdings, where Hunter was working, and
yeah.
they installed a guy who was going to go harder, and I think there's still an ongoing thing with Burisma, to my knowledge, but it just doesn't involve Hunter, and if anything, this could have made Hunter's life harder rather than easier, or cleared him or dropped the case or anything like that. Like,
Yeah, I think that
his
there's
son
like,
any
just to make it,
favors.
you need to make it just a little bit simpler. Like there's just like this fundamental misunderstanding. You're talking about like, oh, Hunter having this job and the Bidens, and he was pressuring Ukraine. And it's like, well, he was pressuring Ukraine to fire their head prosecutor because he wasn't looking into corruption, and he wasn't investigating the company that his son worked for.
And this
And
is something you don't have to take Joe Biden's word on either, because this
it's
was part of an international pressure to see this done, because
and
other
so
countries were
everyone is
sick of the corruption in Ukraine.
yeah, and so everyone is like, oh, like he got this guy fired for his son. It was like he was pushing for that because that guy wasn't investigating the company the son worked for.
And
So
and here's
it's the actually exact opposite of.
and here's the kicker of this whole thing, and I want to be really crystal clear about this. Even if Hunter and Joe were completely guilty of doing some nefarious shit in Ukraine, some corrupt shit that it would look real bad for them if it was true, and they did it all and were just completely red-handed guilty. The fact that Donald Trump got on the phone with the president of Ukraine and told him to investigate his political rival. This is the beginning and end. This is the alpha and omega. Told him that he wanted him to do that is a campaign law violation. It was illegal for him to ask. Just
But
full
there's no
stop.
evidence of him asking that, right?
It's in the I guess the synopsis of the transcript of him saying, "I want you to do this. I want you
He
to look
then
into the
did it on
Bidens."
live TV like a few more times.
That's the thing, is that he was so blunt about what he was asking that it's inescapable. And we have this game of, was it a quid pro quo, all this stuff. Was he withholding aid for it? I mean, it seems pretty obvious that he was, but it doesn't matter. He asked them to do a thing that was illegal. Like, you cannot ask.
And I think it even goes even more basic than that.
It's
At
not.
the end of the day, he's asking another country to do him something that favors him personally. It's not something that's for the best interest of America. Like America doesn't give a shit about finding out dirt about Hunter Biden from 2014. And it's just you don't use your office as the presidency. That's something for your oppo research people to do, which could be perfectly legal, but you don't leverage your power as the president to get something that's going to benefit you personally and not, America. So
Anyway, so I think we've browbeat him enough. Chris, go ahead, man. I'm sure you got something to say.
I guess my last thing is like, don't get me wrong. Do I think Trump would do that? Yeah, I would definitely. But if I'm not mistaken, there is no hard evidence of it. It's not in the transcripts or anything.
I
Um,
mean, he said it on TV.
Okay, I
He
need to
asked. He said. She
look at
said.
that.
He even asked China to look into it.
and yeah, that's the weird thing is it's like he does like this, like doubles and triples up on the thing that he's not supposed to do, so he makes it look normal. The analogy I made before is like, oh well, if I might be in trouble for robbing a bank, but if I rob 5 banks, it'll look like just a normal thing, and I can't get in trouble for robbing a bank.
Well, if I keep robbing banks, and I don't get in trouble for it, people are going to think it's all
You
right to
you
rob
can't you
banks.
cannot request a foreign government to involve themselves in their campaign by doing oppo research that would directly benefit his reelection. If Joe
Because
Biden
there's
was not
yeah.
running for president, it would be a different story. If he's just so certain there's corruption having to do with the Bidens, like that would be somewhat fair game, minus the quid pro quo thing. Somewhat fair game, but the fact that he's running for president against Donald Trump changes the entire landscape of what he's able to do. You cannot request a foreign government to involve themselves in U.S. elections, and that's exactly what it is.
There's even a bigger principle on there. You don't want to create the incentives for them to do that because there already is a massive incentive to do that. The whole purpose
Look
is
at
to
2016.
discourage, like there's already an incentive for a foreign government to want to try to control, the most powerful country in the world's democratic process. Like there's a massive amount of incentive there. And the last thing we want is the head of our country to be encouraging more of that.
Yeah, not a good look.
No, it's not a good look at all. It's not. This is, I mean, and this is why, and it was weird when it happened when I saw the news break, and like I said, James and I we cut an episode pretty quickly after this whole thing, but I was like, what is happening right now with this thing? And Nancy Pelosi's now saying we're doing an impeachment inquiry, which was kind of already sort of unofficially under the way, but now it's like more even though they didn't vote on it, we're in full impeachment inquiry swing because of this thing. And I was like, well, what about the whole Mueller report and the whole obstruction of justice thing? Like those were crimes. Like those were laid out 3, arguably 4 very explicit counts where they meet all the criteria for obstruction of justice. Like he did that shit and just couldn't be true. Like that was this whole thing, and then everyone was like, man, I don't know how I feel about it. And then this thing happened, this off the cuff thing. The whistleblower comes out saying, dear God, look what they've done over here. And Trump released the, I guess the sort of abridged transcript of what happened in the call. And he's saying directly, hey, I want you guys to look into the Bidens. I want you to talk to my boy Giuliani. I want you to talk to AG Barr. Where you're going to meet with these guys. We've been so nice to you, hint, hint. Like, we want you to do this thing. It's right there in the
Do me a
transcript.
favor.
Do me a favor. And he's like, yeah, I'm going to do you a favor.
But I listened to a breakdown. I can't remember it right, but I listened to a breakdown that they said they had evidence that Giuliani thing was months prior before any of this was even a factor. That they've
before any of what?
Like this is all broke. Like going against Trump. Like
Giuliani.
that.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I mean, the Ukraine phone call happened in July, the day after the Mueller hearing.
Mm.
So, like, the Mueller hearing goes, he's like totally exonerated from colluding with a foreign government to influence the election. But guess what I'm doing tomorrow?
Yeah, and maybe I'm remembering wrong. I totally could be. So just.
And let's not forget that Giuliani's friends just got arrested for.
Yeah, and
Sorry.
don't get me. I hope I'm not coming across like I'm sticking up for these guys. Like
No,
I
no, no.
don't
It's
doubt
fine.
that.
No,
I
actually,
appreciate it. I
I
appreciate
find it
the
really like it's kind of refreshing to hear someone who's like genuinely curious, but also just not so like shoved up the ass of the news like myself. So, and like it's good, like it's good. Yeah. So
I
Skepticism is
thought
important. But go ahead.
I just thought I can't. I'll have to revisit it now tomorrow. But Tim Pool did a breakdown where I thought he had showed good evidence that they had misconstrued some of the Giuliani talk, and that it was from back in the spring. And the Ukraine government was like, "No, no, we want to talk to Giuliani. Like they're fans of him. It wasn't even nothing to do with like the election or anything."
No, well,
uh, that is inaccurate.
that's okay. So it's true that Giuliani was in the Ukraine like since the spring of this year, like bopping around and meeting people, and he had those two goons working for him that they just got pinched the other day. Who to find people, and the guys' names were like
Igor
Igor
and
and like Lev or something like that. And their
Yeah,
company,
there's no way.
shit you not, was called Fraud Insurance or something like
fraud
Fraud
guarantee.
Guarantee, right? And they were like fixers for Giuliani, and they got arrested. But let's not. And I don't know if this really connects
They
to the
also
impeachment
had a
thing.
bar in the Ukraine that was like a titty bar that was like mafia something. I can't
It's like
remember what the other name
bada
where it was
bing,
like
something maybe.
mafia tits or something. I don't
Oh my
remember.
god. So anyway,
No
so these
way.
guys, so
I
like
mean, it
The
wasn't
former
actually tits, but it was mafia something.
the former mayor of New York has mafia ties. No way.
there's yeah. Are you kidding me? Yeah, right.
He also married his cousin, so I mean,
Hey.
I didn't know that.
he
Yeah,
did.
yeah.
He
Haley told me
did.
that the other day. I was like, what? Like I thought we only did
Why
that
do
shit in
not more
Tennessee.
people know
Like,
that Giuliani married his cousin? Why do people not realize that?
Well,
well,
Ilhan married her brother. Nah, 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 nah.
no.
Yeah, okay.
But
Giuliani did, in fact, marry his
so
cousin.
anyway, we don't know if the Igor and the other guy, if that really tie. I think they were supposed to appear before some closed door hearings like the same
But
day
I
they were
mean,
fleeing the country. I don't know I don't know if those threads tie
just
together,
to
and I
have
don't know
one
how.
thing said, if I am like funneling money into super PACs for people from foreign governments and not disclosing, being a foreign agent, and doing all of this stuff, and I go to the airport, like I'm not going to be an idiot to only buy a one-way ticket to Vienna. Like I'm going to buy two-way just so it kind of looks like I'm coming back.
Well, they were trying to be
You know?
frugal, you know.
Like at least buy a two-way. Like what? You're not going to burn that $500? Like come
For
on.
their fiscal responsibility. Like,
Yeah, seriously.
and again, the thing they were arrested for was it was campaign finance fraud, because they were laundering money, from Ukrainian, to my understanding, oligarch types
Mm.
into Trump's 2020 campaign, and also the House Minority Leader's reelection campaign.
From Texas.
So
No, no, Pete Sessions.
is it Sessions? I thought it was like McCaffrey or something.
I think he's involved too, but so
Yeah,
one of the
whoever it
first,
is, whoever the fuck it
yeah,
is. But
no, they
like,
did it. It was a few people, so yeah. Anyway,
so like, that's what they got arrested for. Which is not a great look all on its own. Whether that doesn't necessarily come back to Trump, unless he, I guess, knew about
well,
it.
and if you
Well, he
notice,
also
Trump's
denied knowing that, which is
he's
hilarious. And he,
distancing himself from Giuliani now.
well, he has to. Yeah, Giuliani's gonna go to jail probably. But
Is that why Trey Gowdy's called in for him?
I
I
think so.
mean,
Yes, actually.
probably, I mean, you would think that the cousin marriage would have said something, but yeah, he's distancing himself from Giuliani now.
So the whole thing is weird. But to get back to I guess what happened in this phone call and Giuliani's presence in Ukraine before that. Yeah, he was in there before that. But I guess he wasn't getting what he wanted or something like that. And like, it's the whole do me a favor. I want you to meet with these people, including our Attorney General, William Barr, like, who really has no business being involved in any of this, and like jet setting across the globe to find dirt on Trump's political rivals. Like, that's not a thing that should fucking happen. Like, Barr does not work for Trump. He is part of a co-equal branch of government, that's not under the executive. And yet here we are anyway. the fact that Trump asked the president of Ukraine to meet with his people as part of an investigation into his political rival, like just saying that at all is campaign law violation. Like, you cannot do it legally. And I guess when the whistleblower complaint about this got leaked or came out or however it went down, Pelosi jumped on it, and all of a sudden, all us little scared Democrats looking at the Mueller investigation and, there was this, was it collusion, was it conspiracy, was there obstruction of justice? I don't know. I'm a purple state Democrat. I don't want to lose my seat in this, Republican, +8 district, that I promised I wasn't going to get into hyper-partisan shit. And all of a sudden, they're all up out of the fucking trenches and running across no man's land towards impeachment. And here we the fuck are, like, just watching this thing, like, what just happened? And it's all going really fast. I don't know how it's gonna end. I really don't. But the charge is on at this point, because you can't do all this shit and then not bring a vote for impeachment. For there to be a trial in the Senate, following, and they have the votes right now, I think, to carry impeachment.
I mean, in order to impeach, you need a simple majority.
Yep.
They have a majority. You can always pull that trigger. But the thing is, it's politically risky and it's unpopular. Those are the risks.
Yeah.
Also, if you move to impeach now and the Senate doesn't convict, and then Trump wins re-election, that has never happened before. And what are you going to do? Pull that trigger again? You get one shot to pull this trigger. And even if Trump, says, hey, Putin, on live national television after getting reelected in 2020, I will suck your dick if you do this stuff for me personally. They already pulled that move. It's going to be hard. It's going to be even harder to do it again. And also because it's unpopular. Impeachment's always unpopular. It's like the American, no, we're tired of this impeachment stuff. It's been going on for so long. I don't see them moving anytime soon. But impeachment is a political tool. And right now, Democrats are trying to gather criminal court level evidence beyond a reasonable doubt to impeach, because even though this is impeachment's political and they don't need that, it's whether or not someone is abused the office and isn't fit for the job. They're exercising extreme caution to try to get that even highest level of evidence to move, because once they pull the trigger, they can't do it again.
I agree with that assessment, but I think the thing to take into consideration is from in terms of political clout, and because of the groundswell that we're seeing now, support for this inquiry, effectively the trigger's already been pulled, and it's just going to be a matter of whether or not the shot lands, because you can't do this again, like you said. You can't say, oh, Trump's, and he probably will if he gets a second term, do some atrocious, completely illegal thing.
Blatant, too.
Yeah, it does. It really, at this point, kind of, and I don't want to be hyperbolic or ridiculous, he could very easily do it again, because we look like we're just crying wolf over and over, and it's not going to be taken seriously, even if the wolf is there this time, right? He
would have so much clout to actually get that shit, too. In that scenario,
so this has to end in a vote to impeach. They have to have enough juice to make it work in the Senate, or at least drag him down during the Senate's version of a trial, while he should be campaigning, that it fucks up his reelection chances. Those are it. But we're here in October of 2019. We've got more than a year before the election.
Mm-hmm.
The timing is not fantastic. My thought is Nancy Pelosi has to be damn sure of herself for pulling that trigger, because it's been pulled. And all the chips are in.
I mean,
Either this is going to
I
happen
disagree with you
or
that it's
she's
actually
failed.
been pulled yet, but I hear what you're saying.
It-
I do have to hop off soon.
Yeah, no,
though.
I gotta go. We went at this almost 2 hours, but
I
I
always do
think,
this.
yeah, I know we do, and it's I really think it's all or nothing at this point because I don't think she's going to have the support from the House to do this again. Pretty much no matter what it is. Um,
I think that she's getting old too. Isn't she
yeah,
almost 80?
I mean she looks pretty old. I don't know. Chris, any
She's
final
still
thoughts?
she's good looking.
We should.
So
I mean, she's holding up. Chris, final thoughts, sir.
Um, just a perspective from the blue collar world that I am around, and I'm in and out of people's houses every day from all walks of life, upper class, middle class, city Atlanta, rural, outside Atlanta. So, anyways,
Mm,
um, I think that a lot of people are seeing a civil war inside the Democratic Party right now. And you've got uber leftists and the young guns coming up against the old guard of Warren, Pelosi, some of the others. And it's almost like Pelosi's having to wishy-wash back and forth just to handle her own. She's getting usurped by AOC and some of the other young ones.
mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, I think the Dems are too divided. They don't have enough substance at the moment. They can't figure out an identity, and they're going to lose to Trump again because what's going to tank everything is the econ. Like at the end of the day, it's the money in your 401k. And
hmm
I hate to admit it, but I mean, I'm telling you, I work in construction and everything, and the economy has been booming under Trump. And I know people that aren't necessarily big Trump people, but it's the bottom line is they're millionaire business owners, and they're just like, I'm voting Trump. I don't give a shit about his personal life or whatever. They're all corrupt. That's the view.
Yeah, I know. I've talked to a lot of sort of like you said, blue collar type people who are just very and who can blame someone for being just very cynical of politics in general, and politicians, especially career politicians. Uh, it's easy to be very mistrustful. Say, they're all in on it. They're all corrupt. They're all screwing us. Like, yeah, I can see that argument that like at the end of the day, I have more money in my wallet, or things look better, or things feel better, or I feel somewhat more validated in my cynicism by taking this route. Gesundheit. Um, yeah, so I see that, and I don't know where this shit is gonna end with the primaries. We better have someone who looks strong and is and has the support of all the people that they were running against. If we have any chance of unity. And the thing about Pelosi, I think generally speaking, you're right, and I think the different thing we're seeing now, and the thing that really has grabbed my attention so strongly, is that she appears to be going really hard with this impeachment inquiry. That this wishy-washy ride the fence, no, we're not. And it's really just reading the tea leaves. Was there support before? Is there support now? And doing, making the political calculation. Her calculus has come out. We've got this because, and she could very well be wrong, but I feel confident that that's how she's looking at this. That they've got him basically. Because why do this if you don't? Because I think it would be disastrous if this initiative fails. So that's my final thought on the whole thing. And Trump's a dumb bastard for sacrificing the Kurds. But anyway.
I hear Chris on the economic position. I mean, I think at the end of the day, I don't know why Democrats haven't actually, pushed a position of jobs. I feel like Republicans think that they have this stronghold of campaigning on just like the basic platform of jobs. They will make jobs. As someone who follows economic news and everything, we've had a volatile stock market for, I don't know, going on like maybe like 13, 14 months now. And that's not a good place for investors. And the sugar rush and excessive, exuberant adding to with the tax cuts and everything did give a boom to 401ks in 2017 and a little bit in 2018. Um, Things are growing more slowly now, and volatile markets no one likes. And we have rate cuts that are happening at the Fed. And there are these warning signs signaling, which is why I think Trump's going to capitulate to China to try to get a deal done because that is one of his own, I mean, that's his only point. It is a very big, a very solid one. And I will hand you that. Um, but you know, I don't see good moves being made. I'm not entirely worried yet about a recession. I'm still on the fence because there's a lot of warning signs going on. I mean, I also think that like whenever it actually comes to monetary policy, we really need to start separating that from you know like fiscal policy and political policy. Really should those are two different spheres. And so I'm getting off track because you brought up the economy, and I
Yeah,
think
right.
about
I
that a
know
lot.
Haley's kind of a economy wonk. So
But it's interesting to hear that people are still saying that you're still saying that the economy's booming because I'm not trying to be a Debbie Downer, but it's not booming anymore.
No, I'm interested to hear. I really am seriously interested to hear your viewpoint on that. And I don't trust it either. I keep waiting for a downturn anytime.
Well, I mean,
But the last,
you know, it's really just like whenever the Fed cuts rates, you can't put money into a savings account that's going to get a big rate of return. Sure, it's cheap to borrow money, but it's not. You don't get it doesn't. You're not getting paid to save money. Hold on.
I mean, it's pointless to save money in a savings account, anyways. Almost.
Yeah, but why is that? That hasn't CD rate and whenever you have a volatile stock market, so there isn't, any kind of real incentive to save money because rates aren't good, because there isn't any, because borrowing money is so cheap. So why would banks or anyone give you money to hold in a savings account? Because borrowing money is so cheap. They don't need people to start saving money or anything like that. But also, the stock market is not a good, consistent. It's volatile, so it's risky, and so investors, are sort of frustrated in the sense of you can't put money in savings accounts to get a solid rate of return, and whenever you have an extremely volatile stock market, like how do you ensure that your money that you're about to invest isn't going to be lost? So it's not booming anymore, and no one likes a volatile market. That's why the Fed cut rates. But I'll give you that, yeah, so long as Trump can rely on the sugar rush that happened in 2017 and 2018 and not crash it before 2020, November of 2020, he'll be able to say that. But I don't think that he's making good decisions to keep things from being that way. But
Yeah.
anyway, we should close off now,
yeah,
though.
we should close off now. Yeah, I think we buried that one. Uh,
Sorry, I got
no, no,
I
it's fine. And
sidetracked
I
it.
wish I had a better head for it. Honestly, just tell me where to invest and when things are about to turn to shit. Anyway, yeah, we should sign off here, guys. Thanks for joining us. This has gone long, but we had a lot of shit to cover, and we did get to cover it all. So I am pleased that I don't have to alter the show notes. But if you are watching this, if you've seen this link on Facebook, because this is where I share it around, please come over to our YouTube channel and give us a like or follow or whatever it is that you do to hit that button. We are on Facebook as well. Like I said, you've probably already seen us on the page. We also have a private discussion group if you don't want your partisan shit takes to be super public. You can do it in the group. We have our podcast also by the name of Fermenting Opinions. Check it out at fermentingopinions.com. We're on iTunes, Beyond Pod, or wherever else that you might pick up your podcast listening.
Yes, on Twitter.
Oh yes, we're also on Twitter. It's like at Ferment Opinions on Twitter. We did a lot of hot takes during the debate last night that have been pretty funny. Please check those out as well. We want to give a shout out to Mr. Ross Janes at janesmedia.com. He is our digital wizard, makes all the bells and whistles work. That said, I am David Hayden. This has been Fermenting Opinions Hangout. Again, thank you guys for joining us, and we'll see you next time.